All right.
Lander College for Women. She's in college? Stop it.
Okay. All right, does anybody know where we're up to?
It happens.
Yes, chapter 3.
Chapter 3, right?
Beginning of
Okay.
chapter 3. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, with that.
That's why I didn't take the time. It was an easy
Okay,
one.
yeah.
What page are we on this book?
45. Or is that? Yeah,
Are you on the
45.
same page?
Waiting
as
for
me?
him to call me.
You don't have to
I'm
wait.
going to take my glasses
I gave you
off
your
to
number,
see
though.
because my eyes are tired. There you go. Man.
You're allowed to listen even if he doesn't call you.
Oh, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's
one.
him. That's him.
Hello. Hi. All right, I've got
Can
you.
I help you?
I've got you on speaker, but I'm muting you, so no questions today. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm kidding. Hold on.
Wait, why are you kidding?
Yeah.
Wait, can we vote on that?
No, he can be on mute. Listen.
All right, Doc, we're going to vote on whether we should mute you or not, or we can trust you to mute yourself. It's not,
Zoom?
it's not looking good. I'm just going to say that.
Someone didn't mute the call.
No, why don't you mute yourself so this way you can unmute if you find it necessary.
Just they don't realize it. It's a little thing. Yeah, you can control it.
Is that okay?
If you're running
If you're running the show.
All right.
If you know what to do.
All right, so here we are, chapter 3. So we've covered some of the fundamentals that are necessary to move forward. And just to put it in a sentence, essentially what we need for what we've said for moving forward is the information that Hashem is entirely unique and that He is not comparable, nor is He dependent on anyone or anything. And we need to understand that the purpose of creation is because Hashem is the epitome of goodness. And the epitome of goodness necessitates bestowing that goodness upon others. And without there being any others, that's not possible. So therefore Hashem has a system in which He's going to create something else that can be the recipient of said goodness. And because Hashem is the epitome of goodness, that goodness is going to be bestowed upon these recipients in the best possible way. And the best possible way requires our earning that goodness, because in earning it, we become owners of it. It's not simply something that's bestowed upon us by someone else, and it's almost like that other person or entity accomplished. It's that we ourselves accomplish, and in doing so, we will feel the best about the reward that we receive. So that's the basic tenets that we need to have. We need to understand that in order to move forward. Now that that's very clear to everybody, I'm certain. Let's get started here with chapter 3. All right, so Derech Hashem, Ramchal says, Kfar Zacharnu, we have already mentioned, Hayayis Adam Ois Habriya, Hanivres Hadavik Beis Baruch Shemai. Since man is that creature that was created for the purpose of connecting to Hashem, as we explained, the way to receive the ultimate goodness is by connecting to Hashem, who is the ultimate goodness. Mankind is that entity which is hung between the perfection and the deficiency. And mankind is the creature that has the ability to acquire perfection. Okay? So there's no such thing as any other creature acquiring perfection. No animal can acquire perfection. No angel can acquire perfection. It's only mankind that is in that position of being able to head in one direction or the other and to acquire that perfection. Angels are given perfection. Now, I don't know that their perfection is absolute, but they certainly have a degree of perfection that we don't. But that's given to them. That's not something that they've earned or that they've created on their own. It's something that they've simply been, that's the way they're programmed. They're robots in that sense. We, however, have the ability to head in one direction and guide our lives.
Yes. That quick question, does that mean behemoths, animals, are free of deficiency?
Does that mean animals are free of deficiency? Well, animals are incapable of growing or becoming more deficient than they are, meaning whatever they are, they remain. So this is actually something I heard from Rabbi Frand. I don't remember who he said it in the name of. I remember Rabbi Frand saying that we find with all creatures that they are named from the moment they were created. They were all brought before Adam, and Adam named every one of the animals. However, the one creature that was not named was Adam himself. What was Adam's name? Adam, which comes from the word Adama, the ground. Adam came from the ground. But every person thereafter is named, is given a name. What's the idea? The idea is because the only thing every person has in common is that where we come from. But as far as where we go, what we become, that's up in the air. That is yet to be seen. So therefore, mankind receives a name. Every child is given a name because the name, as the Gemara tells us, says naming a child, there's a certain degree of prophecy that the parents are instilled with in order to name their child. And whatever they name their child is going to somehow describe the growth that they will go through in their lifetime. So an animal doesn't have a name. It is what it is from the moment it's born. It just gets bigger. But it doesn't actually change. It doesn't develop. It doesn't grow. As opposed to people, we're all Adam. We're all from the ground. But that's it. After that, the sky's the limit. Everybody's different. Everyone's going to end up in a different place. Therefore, everyone has a different name. So to say an animal has a deficiency, it's kind of hard to say that because it can't move. It's not. It is what it is. It never changes. So you can't really call perfection or deficiency if it has nowhere to go.
Is that because it lacks bechira?
Yes, that's lacking choice. Absolutely.
They
We are
learn,
the
but
only
they can
creatures
learn.
that have
They
that.
can.
They can be
Maybe
taught
trained.
habits. They can't
Habits,
develop
right.
spiritually. There is no such thing as them growing spiritually. It's not possible.
They can't. They can't grow. They can't do something to the next level.
They have no. They have no power of choosing between good and bad.
You'll never see a monkey construct the Empire State Building.
Even if we did, even if we taught a monkey to construct the Empire State Building, that's not the point. The point is the monkey cannot choose between good and bad. It's not in that realm. That its mind isn't set up for choosing between good and bad. It can choose what's good for itself and what's bad for itself. It's going to run away from a predator and it's going to run towards its food and all of that. And it can develop skills in that area too. But it's not choosing between good and bad. The development of man that we're describing here is not the physical development. You want to talk about that? Talk to Jody. She'll help you out. But when you're talking about spiritual development, that's the real development that goes on, and that's what we're talking about over here. And that there is no other creature, not even an angel, that's capable. Because even angels, they don't grow. They're called, the pasuk tells, Hashem tells the prophet, I'm trying to remember if it was Yecheskel. I don't remember which prophet it was. Hashem said to him, I will give you the ability to walk or to go amongst those who are standing. Mahalach ben ha'imdim. You can go amongst those who stand, which means that he will be able to grow even above the angels who are standing, meaning they're stagnant. They can't grow. They can't move. They don't change.
No bechira either.
They have, well, let's leave that alone for now. That's a complicated issue. But they certainly aren't able to grow. They can't develop. But mankind is able to develop. So in a certain sense, mankind is greater than angels because we have that ability to come closer to Hashem because we can change, we can develop, we can grow spiritually, and in that way we can connect to Hashem in a way that even angels can't. Okay. All right. So he continues. However, in order for this growth to happen, it has to be through a person's choice and a person's will. Now, these are two things. Choice and will are things that need to be understood individually. So, a person's choice is... All right, I'm trying to think of good wording to use over here. The person might make a choice even if they don't want to do something. Okay? Let's say, for example, you've got somebody who needs to go to the doctor, a child maybe needs to go to the doctor. They don't want to go, but they make a choice that they're going to go because their parents are telling them they have to go. Or perhaps they're making that choice because they're going to get a lollipop at the end. But they're making that choice even though they don't want to. Then there are people who want to do things, but don't actually make that choice. Like every single person in history has decided they're going to lose weight, and 99% of them don't actually do that, right? That's just human nature.
Power.
What?
It's a Kunstverkehr.
Yeah. So,
Because it tastes so good.
yeah, exactly. So
the other way.
these are two different things.
Right,
These are two different things. There's the will, and there's the knowledge, and here we're talking about the choice and the will. These are kind of deeper issues, but we'll talk about them more as they develop and as we continue on. Okay. You just realized we weren't at Starbucks? No, I'm kidding. You thought the Asian guy took over the class.
I was
All right.
he couldn't understand the teacher. Did he realize?
Did you sell him a policy at least?
Nobody was
No.
talking to me about Hashem. And,
Okay, so the Ramchal continues, Ki'ilu haya muchrach b'masav, because if a person was forced to do the actions, liya is beicher al kopanim b'shleimus, if he was forced to choose goodness and perfection, l'haya nikra ba'emes ba'al shleimusai, he wouldn't really be called the owner, the one who acquired this perfection. Ki einenu balav, because he's not the owner. Ki shem huchrach me'acher l'knoisei, because he was forced, he was made to make this acquisition by someone else. V'hamakneu hu ba'al shleimusai, so it comes out that if someone else is the one who's giving it to you, that means that that other person or entity is really the one who has that perfection, and they're giving it to you, but it's really theirs. It's not yours, it's not something you created and you developed and you own. It's just something that's been given to you by someone else, so it's that someone else who really has it.
So that's going back to no bechira, no free will.
That's what we're saying. He's saying that we need to have free will because if not for that, then what you'd have is a perfection that's unearned. It's a perfection that's simply been placed upon you. You need to be like an angel. You'd have perfection, but you would never be yours. You never accomplished it yourself. Okay. I'm sorry. And then the ultimate purpose of Hashem, that higher purpose of the creation of the universe, would not be fulfilled. Okay.
Is that why people have an innate disliking to, let's say, the famous scenario of somebody whose father chooses what college they're going to go to or whatever, what job they're going to do? Mm-hmm. Is that because it's really connected what we stand like, as a human being? In other words, if our essential,
we don't like being controlled.
Yeah.
not just that. It's not just about being controlled. It's that it's not yours. In other words, if you're not growing spiritually, if somebody would force you to do that,
Right.
the same thing goes for physically.
Other things.
That if
Yeah.
other people are causing
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That aligns with pretty much every other theory of motivation outside of like
All right, there you have it.
Marriage making everything feel
Huh?
I mean, there's
It's all
literally
in Torah.
so much
It's,
in the Torah that I
it's
find
all
like in my daily life with the researching stuff. It's like
They're finally getting it right.
yeah, there's so many parallels, and it doesn't matter. Like there's hundreds of different theories of motivation, and they all like center on that one on those. I just see the parallels are always there,
Yeah, I've
always.
seen it.
You just need to give a workshop and say, here's the basics, that you guys can develop your theories from here.
Well, some of them did probably
I-
pull from her Young,
had to.
Maslow. I mean, Freud, definitely. There are
Definitely.
people that pulled
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
some of this literature. And I don't know about the Ramchal specifically.
Right.
But
Well, if
how
they were
did
smart, they would have. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in English, for heaven's sake. Come on. Okay. So Al-Kain, therefore, Huchrach. It was necessary. Hashem was almost forced, so to speak, in order to fulfill his plan. Sheyunach hadavar lebechiraseh, that it should be left to man's choice, man's decision. Shetiyah nitiyaseh shekula l'shnei tzaddim, that his choosing should be equal to both sides, v'lei muchrachas la'ach mehem, and not forced to one side or the other. Now, this statement right here of the Ramchal is from all of the commentaries that I've seen, and I have about 4 of them at home, and I try to look through all of them before I give the class, and they all said the same thing basically, and it's primarily based on what Rav Chaim Friedlander says, that when he writes over here that a person is going to be in middle and not forced to one side or the other, it doesn't mean it the way we'd understand it. It doesn't mean simply that everyone's always exactly at 50-50. It's not what it means. For a simple example, we all understand that if a person does something wrong multiple times over the course of many years, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to stop doing that. It's going to be much harder for that person to stop than somebody who's given that choice for the very first time. The person who's given that choice for the first time may very well be at a 50-50. But the person who's been doing it this way for 20 years, every day, it's going to be very difficult for them. It might be more like a 98-2 or something, right? So he doesn't mean that everyone's equal 50-50 all the time. What he means is there are a couple different approaches, and they're probably all true. They're probably all intended. Number one is that mankind was initially created with that 50-50. But after the sin of the eating from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, that changed. Man drastically changed at that time. Man used to be much more predominantly spiritual than physical. And at that time, the choices were between good and good, not between good and bad. Whatever, that's, come to my Tuesday night class for about a year and a half when we learned about it, to be able to get an idea of what that's all about. But if you want to listen to the recordings, they're available. I don't think you do, though. But just believe me when I say that there's a lot going on in that.
We need to build your self-esteem, give yourself credit.
I'm just telling you now, it was a very long discussion that spanned many months of arguing with people the same things over and over and over and over again. Anyway, but the idea was that back then, mankind looked very different. Man was predominantly spiritual, very thin physicality is the terming that's used. And in that state, the choice between good and bad wasn't good and bad. It was between good and the other good.
Good and gooder?
No, not if even. So
It's like Dumb and Dumber.
at that point, that's what we've switched to after this thing. Yeah.
I crossed them last year.
So
They went
what
to high
what we've ended up with though after this sin is that we became much more balanced in the sense that we don't have that spiritual drive the way we used to, and perhaps at that point already it wasn't 50-50 anymore. Now the drive to do things wrong is stronger perhaps than the drive to grow. Without getting into exact numbers and things, we have to understand that certainly now, for any given person, we're not going to say it's a 50-50. However, it is important to note that in Michtav Melio, Rav Dessler spends a lot of time talking about the concept that he calls Nekudas HaBechira, the point of choice. Now, that is a very fundamental idea that Rav Dessler really puts out there very nicely and clearly. I'll try to put in a couple of sentences, where basically he says that every person in every moment of their lives is in a different place. And a decision that at one moment is easy, at another moment might be more difficult. And you're never staying stagnant. You're always shifting. You're always sliding on this scale of decision making. So for example, the example I always give is if you have a guy who grew up in the slums and his way of life was always you don't earn the things that you have, you take the things that you have. That's the society he grew up in.
Take the things that they have.
It takes the things that you have, you've taken, right? So for him, when he's walking down the street and he sees a purse sitting in the front seat of a car, for him, he has to make a decision. Am I going to smash that window and take that purse? That's a decision he's got to make. And depending on where he's at in life, that decision might be, shifted, skewed a bit towards the taking side. However, if you take somebody who is a great rabbi who grew up in a family of rabbis, he grew up his whole life in an environment of justice and doing it properly and following the Torah and mitzvahs and everything. When he walks by the car and notices the purse, it doesn't even cross his mind. It's not even a thought, like to break a window and take something. It doesn't even enter into the range of decision making. It's not even in that. It's not even a decision. So you have the exact same scenario of two people walking by the exact same car, watching the same thing. For one, there's a significant choice to make, and for one, there's no choice to make at all. So the reality is that every one of us, in every given situation of our lives, is always going to be somewhere on that scale of the decision-making process. Because even if, let's say, Let's say you got somebody who's just starting to keep kosher. Their whole lives they didn't. Now they're starting. So for someone like that, when they walk by their favorite non-kosher restaurant, there's a decision to make. But the person who's never eaten non-kosher, it doesn't even cross their minds. But then you take that same person and put them a year later, or 10 years later, and all of a sudden, that's changed. But even after the very first time that they resist and don't go in, the second time's choice is not the same place as the first time's choice. It's shifted on that scale a little bit. And every single time they take a step in that direction, the scale shifts and the decision becomes easier and easier till it gets to a point where eventually there's no decision.
Probably
It becomes
first
that
gets
easy.
harder and harder.
What?
Probably first gets harder and harder, and then
It seems that the very first time is the hardest. And after that, you have something to build on. You've already built up a little bit of an immunity.
Because when I started diet, the first time was really easy to say no.
Because you're still motivated, you're saying.
No, it's like I want.
You're still motivated. I hear you. Okay. But the idea is that every choice that we make, the way Hashem makes the judgments from our choices is based on where we are on that sliding scale. So for the guy who grew up in the slums to walk by that pocketbook and not take it, that's a major win for him. He's going to get the amount of reward that the great rabbi would get for learning for, 15 hours straight without interruption, even though his house is burning down, right? It's just that everyone has their point of choice where Hashem says, this is where you're being tested. Anything below this or above this is not a test. We also have situations where it's not a test because it's too difficult. It's not even an option. We get to a point where it's like, there's no way we're making it out of this unscathed. That happens also. That's also not part of the decision-making process, and we're judged accordingly because it's not part of a decision. So this decision-making process, as far as the judgment is concerned, is only at this one specific point. And that point is constantly changing, but it's at that one specific point. So it could be, again, one of the interpretations of what the Derech Hashem is saying over here is that everyone's at that 50-50. He means that point where you are in this moment. Hashem is going to test you in this area with this decision. There's going to be a 50-50 decision you're going to have to make. And that's where Hashem judges. And that's perhaps what he's talking about over here, where he says everyone's equally balanced between the two, because that is, at that moment, that's the test that Hashem is giving you in order for you to move on your specific scale that is for you.
That's very apropos for Elul.
In other words,
Going to
the guy walking.
Very much so. Very much so,
In other words, the
yeah.
guy walking by the purse, that's not his area.
It's not even a
In other words,
decision.
that's not what he's talking
But the
about.
catalytic
Correct.
converter might be.
Right.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
To get the cinder blocks to get the wheels on.
Just wasn't his, it's a horror.
That's right. That's right. He already had a good person.
Well, they say in addiction, they say that when a person is really in the throes of addiction, that that individual almost in some way, shape, or form loses his free will. That individual has no more choice. He has to take that drink. He has to do that. There's going to be repercussions if you don't, like DTs, delirium tremens, and whatever you're going to get. So that individual now is stuck in that vicious cycle, that cyclical pattern of I have to drink.
Right.
My free
And
will
it's
is
at a
almost
point
it's
where
like 90,
that
it's
decision,
90-10 now.
it's not a decision
It's not
anymore.
a decision
Right.
anymore.
It's not in the range of decision making.
And it goes for any addiction.
Yeah.
Shopping,
Yeah.
eating, this, that,
Yeah.
smoking,
Everything.
So that's what happens to people. You have to be. This is what makes it so difficult in addiction is you have to try to get to that nakuda, find that place, and then start working very hard. It's not easy for any of us, but to get to a place where you make that you can get your decision back and like you start taking ownership.
Absolutely.
To recover.
Absolutely.
The struggle's real.
You heard it here first, folks. All right.
Do you want to know what the pharmacist I work with says? Excuses are easy. He has a saying, excuses are easy. I agree with him. It's easy to make an excuse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
the
that's for sure.
excuses are the rationalization that protect you from having to deal with the truth of the matter. It's the minimization
So that's
of
how we survive.
the rationalization. We all do it.
I had
Don't worry.
a
We
driver
all do it.
U-turn while crossing students, and her excuse was, the sun was in my eyes.
Interesting.
Yes.
But you could see
She only drives away from the sun. That's
Here,
amazing.
why don't you drop these off?
Very profound.
Drop those
The sun
off.
just
I-
popped.
and-
The sun just
and me-
popped out of nowhere.
And me being a silverman,
Some
I
popped
tell
out of
her,
nowhere.
you,
And it made
you
her
tell
spin
my
around.
grandchildren that when I don't
Gosh, you gotta
come
watch out
home
that
for
sun. It just comes
Shabbos.
at you.
Okay.
It's like when my cousin crashed into the gas station thing. It's like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, just
Never-
popped up out of the
Never did
ground.
see it.
Popped up.
We never did see it.
When I was a claims adjuster, I get that all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure, I'm sure.
Get 'em at my
Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Now, v'yeh by koyach. Now, a person needs to have the strength, habechira, of choice, of free choice. Live chayr b'das u'b'chefetz, to choose with knowledge and with will, be'ezim sheyirtze, whichever one he wants. Now, again, knowledge and will. These are the same, basically the same two things we mentioned before. A person can know that smoking is bad. This is the example that's given actually in the commentaries. A person can know that smoking is bad and still not have the will to change. At the same time, a person may have a will to do something but not actually know that they're not making that decision because of a irrational approach, because they know this is what should be done. They're simply doing it for whatever, any number of other reasons. But when it comes to making proper choices in life, you need to have both of those. You need to have a knowledge, you need to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I want to make this choice, so this way I make it again in the future, even when circumstances change. And you also have to have that will, because making all the decisions don't really help if you don't have that will that's coming alongside it. Okay. V'hayecheles gam kein biyadai, and the ability also has to be within a person's reach. Liknais ezmehem sheyirtzeh, to acquire whichever approach he wants to take.